Welcome to my official podcast on the eve of Christmas. And most importantly, my guest is my beloved husband, Geordie. And he and I thought we'd contemplate Christmas this year, looking back on our virtual cocktail party, which was such fun. And looking back also on the many different Christmases which our ancestors have spent here at Highclere. In fact, over the last 1,000 years, although I can't pretend we were there quite that long ago.
Well, 1,000 years is a fair time. I don't quite feel 1,000 years, but how long has the estate been in the family? Since 1679, so maybe I'm 300 and something years, or 350, 60 years.
Well, you're doing very well. I think we need to bottle longevity, particularly in the extraordinary year in which we've lived through. I really enjoyed writing Christmas at Highclere, Geordie. It made me think about memories of people who've lived here before us, of the recipes and the family gatherings, which in a smaller way we are practicing this year, a small celebration perhaps for many of us of having made it through the year and remembering those who were not here, whether lost in the past year or for myself and yourself, of our parents who sadly died a few years ago. But Christmas at Highclere, the first story I wrote was about a traveller arriving at Highclere 800 AD. So that was the Christmas in which King Charlemagne was crowned Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day. And there's the wonderful huge statue down by the gardens.
Yes, I mean, as a small boy, the statue of King Charlemagne in the corner down there by the Monk's Garden, sort of surrounded by the yew tree and with dark ivy on him, was actually a little bit intimidating and slightly ghostly. But my grandfather always said, "Oh, our family goes back a long way, and you're related somehow to this man," which I thought was rather an amazing thing, because he was such a dim and distant, extraordinary character from the past.
Well, my father always said we were related to him as well.
the world is related to King Charlemagne, yeah.
But it is an extraordinary statue, and I also used to say to Eddie that if he was looking to the left, it was a good day. If he was looking to the right, it was not a very good day. We had to watch out. But I don't think he ever moved his head. Otherwise, I would have been really spooked.
Yeah, but he's been a sort of sentinel there, sitting in the corner there, looking back up towards the castle in the distance, rather than our more recent statue, the head and bust of Capability Brown, looks across his landscape to the south and southwest. But of course, they're both figures in long time periods, aren't they, really? I mean, Capability Brown had an extraordinary influence on the landscape of Highclere since the 18th century, and King Charlemagne on the whole history of Europe since a very long time ago.
And again, we all stop and pause at the winter solstice, which is then marked by Christmas on the 25th of December, and think about these things from the past.
I was thinking back to the early 60s, that very cold Christmas. Was it 64 or so? And literally everything was frozen. And I was pretty young then, about sort of 7 or so. And the lake at Milford Lake was frozen solid. And I remember Christmas Eve so well, with snow, flowering eddies of snow. And a fox ran across the whole lake, literally in front of us, left, right, quite a long distance, and it seemed sort of emblematic of the time. And then going up to have Christmas Day with my grandfather in the castle. And when you're quite a sort of small person then, even though we have this big Christmas tree now, but even though we had a lesser Christmas tree, it was still quite a big thing. And it was quite intimidating building to be there over Christmas with the rest of the family. And there was the grand Christmas lunch in the dining room, and the rather forbidding butler, Robert Taylor, who really was a Mr. Carson, properly, of the time, and used to be quite strict with the children. And so, you have these. My grandfather just loved telling endless stories, and he was always full of great excitement and charm. But these memories do stick in the mind.
And part of Christmas for me was always going down to Cornwall, and many of the recipes are from my memories down with my mother and Queenie, who was our old cook who used to cook for us, who specialised in those really very heavy English puddings, but we loved them. We used to spend the whole day running on the beach, building forts and playing football or whatever else, going for long walks and coming back to have treacle tart amongst all the other foods. And of course, I was just trying to remind our son Edward that In Cornwall, after Christmas Eve, all the shops were shut for about 7 days. So my mother used to have to plan and use all the food very wisely, because if you ran out, you ran out. It was very different to today's world, where you could just pop back if you've forgotten something. But I still enjoy it, and the planning of the menus, and because there were so many of us, we all had where we sat and who was laying the table, who was clearing up, who was washing, who was drying, who was setting for the next meal. But it was good fun, amazing memories in rather a cold house with little central heating, which I suppose hasn't changed, Geordie.
Well, the castle can also struggle a bit if it's really cold, because you get the big fire in the saloon, but then with the north wind and northeast wind, it can be a bit cold. Not so bad at all as long as the wind stays in the west. But I remember my grandfather had a wonderful cook called Ivy, maybe a bit like your Queenie, who also loved doing the classic heavy puddings of all sorts, quite let alone Christmas pudding with its little silver sixpences in you had to find, and the fantastic brandy butter. But she also did great sort of strawberry puddings and all those kind of things. And she looked after my grandfather's 2 Labradors, who were called Prune and Custard, and they rather became the weight associated with Prune and Custard after a bit, because the amount of treats they got. They lived in the kitchen the whole time.
Well, it probably would have been one of the warmer places.
Definitely one of the warmer places, yes. Yeah.
Geordie, obviously this Christmas is so different from our Christmases that we've spent in the castle in the past. I remember when my sisters first came and stayed with us, and we hadn't quite got the hot water going properly or the electricity, and you used to complain on their usage of when the hairdryers were on in the evening, and we were sorting out the bathrooms, but it was filled with laughter and people and charades and Twister and Cluedo and so many different games, wasn't it? And I've got various nieces. So I think of that, which is going to be incredibly different to this year, isn't it?
Yes, well, we've certainly really got the bedrooms on the first and even part of the second floor going now, and things are much more organised for people having a very nice stay. But and yes, in the past Christmases, we've literally we go to church at 11 o'clock, we come back and open presents, and then we have a big lunch in the dining room in the castle, which can have, we've had 30. I think the most was nearly 40 people all around for it, wasn't it? Really,
it was a bit mad.
It was a bit mad and crazy, and it was all good fun. And we got through, and then we played silly games from the crackers and all those little funny
the musical
puzzles.
crackers.
The musical crackers, yes, that was never so musical, but it was fun to do. But I mean, of course, this coming Christmas has been much more quiet affair because of all the rules with the virus. We can't all meet together, so there's going to be a small amount of us in our own house. The castle will be taking a rest.
Yes.
People have worked very hard in December with all our small events this year and things we've done, so it's great. Everyone goes off to have a rest. The castle can be slumberingly quiet for a few days. Yes. And we'll be doing things in the small house next door. But of course, going back to my grandfather's time, when it was a small boy, Christmas was all great fun, but it was a slightly intimidating, enormous building and lots of adults. But we did used to it's the same old routine of going to church at 11, all the whole Christmas service and all the carols, and that's all great. Then we go back. You could actually walk back up to the castle if you want to take some exercise from church, which is great. And then there was the traditional big lunch in the dining room. Of course, all ages, and there would have been some of the normal games around the crackers and board games and that kind of thing as well as silly games like going and hiding in the castle playing sardines. All that kind of thing. Although
we have done that as well, haven't we?
Done that too. My grandfather used to love all that kind of thing. It's a little bit alarming sometimes for kids, because if you were a bit silly, you could go really high up in the building and you might fall through something. My parents used to get a little bit worried about that.
Although I think there's less things to fall through now.
No, that's true enough, yeah.
But on the other hand, there are various mannequins scattered around in various cupboards, which I think as a small child might make you shriek and run away.
If it was a dark area and I opened that up suddenly, I think I might have had a jump and run a mile. But yes, of course, there's sort of nooks and crannies of the castle. It's a very big building. But of course, we have brought a lot of it to life and improved quite a lot of the first and second floor. So it's really sort of a fully going building again nowadays.
Yes, and I think when we played sardines in more modern times, we limited it to 2 floors, which I thought was strategic. Nevertheless, I think you went and hid with a girlfriend. Well, you went and hid, and a girlfriend of mine found you. 20 minutes later, none of us had actually found the two of you.
I think my grandfather would love that idea in the past.
I'm sure you did, Geordie. So funny. Just to go backwards in time a little bit, of course, your grandfather also spent the Christmases from 1939 to 1945 here in the castle. And in many ways, that's worth pausing for thought and thinking about as a comparison. Because it was a very strange time. Often families were split apart. Some might have been at war, others were working in London, other children, such as here, were evacuated. So it was a really challenging time. And there are some lovely letters and notes and memorabilia from your father, who came back here with his cousin Patricia, who I was lucky enough to know, and who told me so many stories of that time before she sadly died. And she and your pa would go in and give presents to the evacuee children and, you know, try to sing to them under the Christmas tree and make their Christmas a little bit better. They were between 3 and 5 years old, and they were not with their parents. So it was a really challenging time. And obviously I wrote the book Catherine, the Real Downton Abbey, which takes readers through the World War II, beginning in obviously the preceding decade and ending in 45. And I loved writing that book. It made me cry and laugh, the resilience and how people managed to work their way through it. But the Christmases have remained with me in my mind.
Yes, well, my father spent much of 1944 as a soldier in Italy, slowly moving up the country, which is obviously very challenging. My grandfather used to write him letters as if everything was quite normal. And my father would be saying, well, yes, actually, it's kind of tough here. We've just been shot at. but yes, you're right. He then finally did come back towards the end of that year, as his unit was sent back. He had to have a small operation on foot, and he was lucky with that because one of those V bombs landed very near the hospital, so you could either be shot out in Italy or something might happen back home. But then of course, yes, you're right. He then went towards the end. He was helping with evacuee children who were still there right till towards the end of the war, until they went back to London again.
I think it wasn't until after D-Day until they left, but it was really moving. And Patricia, his cousin, who was 15 or 16, she used to tell me she was staying with her little dog in the castle, sometimes more or less on her own on the first floor. And she used to hear the night watchman Stratford come round because he had a dicky leg, so one leg was wooden, and she used to hear that noise as he stamped round with his dog. And she told me some wonderful ghost stories, actually. But so I think sort of Christmas is about memories. And looking back now on Christmas Eve, I think the Christmas cocktail party on the 18th was, I hope, quite a triumph, with Santa Claus arriving with his sledge and me being silly checking the chimney when we lit the fire. That was a bit silly. And the delicious cocktails, Geordie. We have traversed so much life, haven't we, in the last 9 months, in terms of some of the new life skills we've tried to acquire, often incompetently, but perhaps that's the charm.
Well, yes, because it was the total sudden challenge of the lockdown period and how we were going to suddenly relate and talk to the world. But of course, in the misery of this pandemic year, unlike going back to my grandfather's time, we have the extraordinary advantage of the modern technology to be allowed to make a window on the world for Highclere. And have some fun asking people to join in with us in our original virtual cocktail parties, which of course culminated in the summertime when we were in June, and our wonderful one out in the temple on the east lawns of the castle, where the glorious Arab filly Phoebe came and walked off as if she'd been trained to do it for her lifetime.
She did. That was so funny. You know, it has been amazing. And I have to say, I'm not sure everybody realises, but when we started with our virtual cocktail party, I think our phones were the wrong way up, so things came out upside down. I mean, I think luckily some of the platforms were blamed for rather our incompetence. So we've now acquired quite a gallery of microphones and help, so it's easier to hear us. But it has been an extraordinary year, and I hope 2021, as it heads towards next Christmas, will have a different feel, a more positive feel, where we can actually gather together again.
Well, we really do all hope we will meet all our friends again and our family again. As Her Majesty the Queen reminded us earlier on in the pandemic with that wonderful speech, but I think it'll take the time for the vaccine to become fully distributed to people, so we can't rush the fences, as it were, and we'll have to be careful in the meanwhile. But we're going to do our best here, aren't we, to do as much as we can with people when we can. Really.
We had decorated, as was shown on the TV programme. We spent a lot of time decorating because we were locked down. And that way, that was a slight advantage, looking for something positive to talk about.
Well, it enabled Sally and her team to have absolute free reign of the castle with nothing else going on, to make a fantastic job of all those extraordinary wreaths and garlands all around the stairs, the displays in the drawing room, which so fit the colour of the drawing room, don't they? They're all around the fireplace. They are absolutely stunning. And the total sort of enhancement of the library with all its deep, rich
red
colours. I mean, that's fantastic. So I think people really have had a great time going around the castle in a very sort of peaceful and obviously nearly exclusive way.
Yes, I think it has. I hope it's been a really lovely day out for people, and with hopefully good fortune, we might be able to open in a small way for Valentine's, which should be lovely again, but just very small numbers compared to any other year. But I nevertheless think a day out, a treat, gives you a sort of sense of mental well-being and something to look forward to, which is useful. Otherwise, it's the same old, which can make your head turn round rather than look outwards.
Yes, I think we will have it's great to enjoy. We've all had probably more of our fill of endless digital TV stations and channels, all that kind of thing, and it's great to be out in the real world seeing. I mean, at Highclere, I've been lucky to be able to have this fantastic countryside all around the castle. I mean, the castle is a gem of a building, but it sits in the most amazing scenery in North Hampshire, in the wonderful 18th century parkland. The cedar trees, which go, how old is the oldest one? 300 years or so?
A little bit more. I mean, I think they were planted out around about 1770, 1780, but often they were grown on in a nursery for the first 15 years, Geordie, to ensure that they got off to a good start. Your ancestors were good plantsmen. I hope you've inherited that.
Well, it's extraordinary foresight. We live in this amazing landscape, but we wouldn't be living in it had people not had the incredible foresight to have a go and plant a design and not worrying about what they were going to see in their lifetime, but how brilliant it was going to be in their great-grandchildren and great-great-great-grandchildren's lifetime.
It is. It's an honour. It's an honour and a privilege to be here, and I hope this Christmas, I suspect we'll spend much of the time going for walks. We can also walk around because we've created an area behind the Etruscan temple which I would love to plan with you in memory of your mother. So at Jeannie's walk in the place
she loved that bit of the castle gardens around there, always, really. And she'd also be very pleased that we restored the little temple building. And it's been beautifully done all around with this new hedgerows and views to the park at the south. It's fantastic around there now.
Well, it will be, and I've taken on the bit at the back, so that should hopefully be level. And one of my Christmas walks was just to meander and ponder and plan how we can create a little area. And I've got some water there, so we can create a couple of small fountains if we want, or because I think of her living by the water in the lake, and then with also the Indian paintbrush flowers, so we can have some beautiful lands and see what we can do.
We need to try and get the seed for them, but they should grow here perfectly okay. I mean, I've actually seen them wild up in the mountains, in the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming, and they're amazing high up there. They're amongst all the other alpine flowers that you see.
Well, it'd be lovely, to give some thought to that, Geordie. So I'm quite excited that Christmas, whilst it'll be you and I and possibly our son and my stepson too.
And George, yeah.
But that's about it, which is fine. But we can have some lovely walks contemplating our plans for the garden for the future. And there's something very settling and reassuring about that, perhaps at Christmas time, both looking back and looking forwards. And it's learning from the past to live today as well as we can. And
well, I was just been with, I'm on the indoor garden side in the orangery. I was just been with Paul, our head gardener. And we've added a little bit to our current citrus collection to sort of broaden it, because I wanted a bit more different types of tastes of citrus, because as soon as we can get enough of them, we dry them, they go off to the distilling.
For the gin.
For the gin, and they're quite a vital part of the production process.
In some ways, we've got quite a busy Christmas. I am the chef. Perhaps you can be my sous chef.
Emma was teasing me about my lack of total cooking involvement, but I said I was a very good part of the support team for it, and I try to avoid things being burnt or dried out or whatever.
I put something in the Arga and walk away, and I just completely forget. That is the downside, and I never seem to set an alarm correctly or at all, and then I've put my mobile phone down, so the whole thing has gone slightly wrong.
But you had a triumph with the boys yesterday evening with your cheese and mustard cauliflower
and broccoli gratin. Thank you. So that was.
I was
wanted a
worrying that this
vegetarian.
Greek vegetarian dish was not necessarily going to go down well, but they absolutely demolished it. It was a big success.
Well, it was lovely, and then we had some chicken and mushroom soup first, and then that was hopefully a really good evening meal. So we all slept well. But I enjoy cooking.
I think we got some of our own lamb, actually.
We have got our own lamb.
Yeah.
So as usual, I suppose Georgie and I are back to talking about food. If I hadn't been able to cook soups and some of the foods you love, I'm not sure you'd have married me. Food is at the heart of both of our lives. And it was at the heart of my family life growing up. And curiously enough, after my parents both sadly died, what helped us and my sisters helped us keep together was sitting down and making spaghetti bolognese and opening a bottle of red wine and thinking about what we'd done that day and how we were going to get through the next few days. So sitting down, eating together is just an essential part of our life. And at Christmas, that's a good thing to do. And curiously enough, Geordie, in the Christmas book, after my Christmas feast chapters, I then write about the 12 days after Christmas, and I start writing about going for walks. So I think that's what we're going to be doing. I've got some thermos flasks, which I'm going to fill with soup, and we can set off with thermos flasks of soup and water, go for long walks, have a good day outside when it's not raining, and then come back in again. And I need to start writing my next book.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually the traditional thing around Christmas, especially having had a possibly too rich meal, was to climb up Beacon Hill, isn't it? From one side or the other, which is quite steep, and then hopefully the weather's good enough that you can they say you can see about 6 counties round the circle from it. So
well,
I
thought it was really 4 counties from the top of the castle. John's always said it's 6, but we get muddled about which 4 or 6 it is. Maybe it's 5. I don't know. Anyway, it's an extraordinary place to live, and it's lovely, at least sitting down to pause this Christmas. It's special and much needed.
Absolutely. Let's hope we all have a very happy and safe Christmas.
Yes. I hope you're enjoying my podcast as much as I'm enjoying making them. Do let your friends and family know about them. Subscribe. And if you're feeling generous, please leave a review. Thank you.